Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have more updates, more crazy action when it comes to the betting on the presidential election. We are seeing huge shifts within the past week and really the past 4 or 5 hours. So, right now, we do have Trump sitting around 56 to 44 in terms of odds. This is Polymarket. You can see the recent shift here. Earlier this morning, Trump was really trending back up. He was around 60-40. To put that into context, we saw 2 nights ago or a night ago, Trump was down to like 54, 53% chance to win. He goes up to 60, and now he's come back down to around 56. So we're seeing 4 or 5 point swings in the span of 2 or 3 hours. You're going to see more and more of that. And when it comes to this, I would imagine this is the range we're going to head into election night, considering basically all the final polls are done. Now, there are a few more final polls that did get released. There's the TIPP. That's like a tracker poll. Their final poll actually did have Donald Trump up 0.5. It kept going back and forth because they did a daily poll every single day, but their final poll was Trump plus half point, plus 1/2 of a point, which was kind of funny. But yeah, this is just the crazy movement that we are seeing right now when it comes to the general election. And again, I think going into election night, about 4 or 5 o'clock tomorrow, you're going to see it somewhere within this range. Trump at 54, 55, 56, 57, somewhere in there. Harris are in the lower 40s going into election night. And then obviously this is going to be live, so there's going to be more betting when the votes start coming in, and that's when we're really going to see movement. Using this as an asset, and also the New York Times needle, those are going to be the two major assets when the votes start coming in to tell us how things are looking and how they're going. And then obviously, depending on what counties are counting, but that's a little bit more complex in terms of deciding and finding that information out rather than just looking at the betting and the current odds. But I would say you're going to see shifts. People have said, you really can't pay much attention to the betting at this point. We really did see it tighten. You can see within the past month, Trump was around 66, 67. It's come down now, and we've really seen this kind of zigzag here where Trump's gained a little bit, but now Harris, within the past few hours, is making up some points in terms of that. But then we can also see, I think this is based on a 24-hour change, because you see it says Trump plus 2.1, Harris minus 2.1. I think that's based on 24 hours ago what it was. I believe that's what it is. But right now, so if this is the election map, then yes, Trump wins. Really, all he has to win is Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Right now, Georgia, Trump's going back up in Georgia. I don't know why he was under 70, but he's back up to 67. He was at like 63 at one point. North Carolina's at 67. You do have Arizona at 76. Arizona's looking very, very good. The early voting is amazing. Not that the early vote means everything, but you're up by 9 if you're conservatives in Arizona compared to where they were. It's looking like a 4 or 5 point win when you forecast it right now in Arizona. Nevada's at 62. There's been positive polls for Trump. There's been negative polls. I think the general vibe is possibly around a 1 point victory in Nevada for Trump. Wisconsin, Harris is a slight favorite. Michigan, Harris is also a slight favorite. And then the big one, Pennsylvania, Trump sitting at a 56% chance. So they have Pennsylvania going to Trump, at least the betting right now does, and Michigan and Wisconsin going to Harris. I would disagree with that. I think Trump wins all of them, but worst case, I think he would only lose Michigan. But either way, that is there. We also had the final Trafalgar poll come out last night. It did have Donald Trump leading Michigan by half a point, but losing Wisconsin. But they're very slim margins. It is what it is. You've also got Virginia. I heard something about Virginia where Trump's internals said he was down by about 2 to 3 points in Virginia. You can see right now Harris is a big favorite. You do also have New Hampshire. Those would be the two states I'd be looking at potentially as next up states for Trump. He's got a 16% chance right now in New Hampshire. Minnesota, I think it was never going to happen. He's got an 8% chance. And then New Mexico, an 8% chance in that state as well. For Harris, it would be, I guess, Iowa. But you know what? There was a new poll that came out from Emerson about Ohio with Trump sitting plus 12. That is a very good poll. It has Moreno up by 3, which is, you would figure Moreno would probably win by more than 3, like 4 or 5 if Trump wins Ohio by 12 at least. But if Trump wins, this is just crazy. The idea that Emerson would release a poll in Iowa with Trump up by 10 and then Ohio, Trump up by 12, and you've got that Seltzer poll that has Trump down by, the difference there is so remarkable. If Trump wins Ohio by 12, that's a 4-point improvement in Ohio since 2020. That is an amazing poll when you factor in, obviously Ohio being part of the Rust Belt. We don't talk about it because it's not a swing state anymore. But that's going to have, you would think, have an effect and a reaction to where Michigan would be more right-wing, Wisconsin would be more right, Pennsylvania, especially bordering Ohio, would vote similar in terms of being slightly more right if Ohio goes 4 points to the right. Because remember, in 2020, Ohio did not move at all. Trump won Ohio in 2016 by 8, and he won it in 2020 by 8 as well. So if it goes 4 points to the right or 3 points or whatever it is, that's going to be a good indicator that some of these other states within the Rust Belt, the reason everyone freaked out about the Seltzer poll is because it is a very accurate poll historically. But again, it's like that doesn't mean it's going to be 100% accurate. Again, when you get a result like that, it's such a ridiculous absurdity that it's hard to take seriously. And when you've got everything else factored in and all the other polls showing the exact opposite, because if Iowa's going to Harris, all the other Rust Belt states will go to Harris by a bigger margin, which is just something we're not seeing at all. So I would throw that poll away. I know a lot of other people have thrown that poll away. And you also do have, and this is something we're also seeing, we've got Nate Silver's model now that has it basically 50-50. We have 538 who's going to basically say it's 50-50. It seems like most of these forecasters and many of these pollsters have gotten really tired of the criticism. And listen, you can say, well, it's a close election and whatever, we're not going to make a prediction, or it's basically a toss-up. But it's like, this happens once every 4 years. You think these people would make a prediction. And I think Nate Silver did say if he had, his gut is that Trump was going to win. But it's like a lot of these pollsters are just coming out with like tide polls and within the margin, +1, +2. And listen, that's fine. If it's a close election, it's a close election. But it does feel like a lot of these pollsters are very coy in terms of, the narrative right now is it's totally 50-50. But obviously we've been following 538. I haven't been following it very much except for recently, just because it's more liberal in terms of the way they weight their polls. However, I will say I'm a little surprised by the polls that they include. When I was looking at it, they include like Patriot polling. They include the TIPP. The TIPP is not necessarily conservative, but it's like a tracking poll. They include Atlas. Well, they should include Atlas Intel because it was the most accurate in 2020. But they have Trump at a 53% chance. That's actually higher than Silver's model. So now 538 is more conservative. But no, it's just based off of the polls that they weigh. You can see they also include New York Post, which kind of blew up in their face because the New York Post, that poll was Harris +4, and then it switched to even, which I'm sure affected the odds at least a little bit. Emerson, their polling's been pretty solid for Trump. So they include Emerson. ActiVote's been kind of iffy. ABC News has been very liberal. YouGov has been liberal. And so those are kind of the pollsters that they include. But even, 538 has Trump up going into, you could, if you're a liberal, you can cope and say it's basically 50-50. But if you factor in some of the pollsters that they include, I would say it's about Trump's 60 to 65% chance when you look at all the polls and then you add 2020 and 2016. And also the Gallup Party ID, which I believe was finally reported, was Republican Environment 1.3, which, again, this is where it's like, well, people are just going to make the argument about the Seltzer poll always being accurate and then me saying it's going to be wrong. I guess the Gallup Party ID could be wrong, but the Gallup Party ID has been within a point of the popular vote in the past 5 straight elections. It actually might be the past 6 straight elections. It's either 5 or 6. But basically what that means, if Republicans are sitting plus 1.3 in terms of party environment, Donald Trump, if you trust the Gallup Party ID, is guaranteed to win the popular vote. That's with trusting the Gallup Party ID based on it being accurate within the past 5 election cycles. And if Trump wins the popular vote, he's winning the election guaranteed. Now, listen, the Gallup Party ID could be wrong. It's just like I said, the Seltzer poll, it's been very accurate, but I guarantee it's going to be wrong. So maybe the Gallup Party ID is wrong. But I'm just saying, Trump sitting, Republican environment plus 1.3. Remember, the final CNN poll had a Republican generic ballot +3. So there are some really positive things. And even 538, they're coming out and saying Trump's got a slightly better than average chance. And this was the most recent polling. The Patriot poll also has a Harris +1. The TIPP has Trump +1, basically tied. This New York Post one was from a little while ago. I do want to look at their state by state. I'm guessing they have Pennsylvania going to Trump, 53% chance. So that's why. And then they're gonna have Harris up in Michigan and Wisconsin. It is interesting, believe it or not. The betting on Polymarket, which is normally seen as more Republican, I guess you can say, based on people saying more Republicans bet or whatever. Michigan, there's a better chance Trump has of winning Michigan, according to 538 right now, than Polymarket. But Polymarket's going to swing significantly. I think they've way overinflated Harris on Polymarket in terms of Michigan and Wisconsin. But they've got her at 57 here. They've got her at 56 in Wisconsin. Yeah, I would probably say, personally, I think Trump's the slight favorite in both of those states, but I would say Wisconsin's a better chance for Trump than Michigan right now in terms of that. They've got a 96% chance for Trump in Ohio. Obviously, he's going to win that state. They've got, what is Georgia? 63. I would say it's about 70% in Georgia right now. Arizona, they've got 70. So there's a consensus right now with a lot of these forecasters Trump is a big not a big, but Trump is a solid favorite in Arizona. He's a pretty good favorite in both Georgia and North Carolina. I'm guessing North Carolina and Georgia are very similar in terms of odds right now. Arizona is going to be a little bit higher. Nevada is, I would say, is still a pure swing state. Although I would give Trump the slight edge here. They've got it at 53. I wonder what they have Iowa. Yeah, see, they've got Iowa at 94. I wonder if they input that poll, because a lot of liberals are probably pissed off that Iowa's not closer because of that poll. They took it for gospel. But either way, these numbers from Maine 2nd District, 91, Maine at large. Yeah, there was a pretty crazy Maine at large poll that had Harris up by a lot. Or I don't know if it was the 1st district. I thought it was like maybe just the 1st district, because it was such a crazy poll. It had Harris up by like 24 points. And there's no way Maine at large is going to be anywhere close to 24 points. But I guess we'll have to see. I do think Maine at large will go to Harris, but it's going to be way closer than 24 points. That's for sure. This election right now, guys, it looks like Trump looking very good in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. He wins Pennsylvania, the election's over. It's that simple. Really, it's just Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, but I'm just saying it also looks like it's going to be a solid win for Trump in Arizona, possibly by more than the margin of error, possibly by 4 points, maybe 4.5. Georgia looks like a decent win. North Carolina looks like a decent win. Nevada, to me, is very close. I would say slight lean to Trump. Pennsylvania is a lean to Trump. And then these two states, they'll say, are very, very close because of more recent, like the Marist poll coming out being positive for Harris, CNN poll, that coming out being positive for Harris. And then they'll also use the Iowa poll and factor that in. But you also have to think about the Emerson, Ohio poll, which looks like they don't have even in here. The Emerson, Ohio poll that has Trump up by 12 is another big indicator that maybe that Iowa poll is completely wrong. And we obviously think it is completely wrong. But right now it seems like the election is clearly setting up with a narrative developing that Pennsylvania will be the deciding state. I do not think that's going to be the case, because I think Trump's going to win all the swing states. Obviously, there is the scenario to where if Trump does win all of the Sun Belt, meaning Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, but loses the Rust Belt, he would be at 268. So he would lose by a single. She would be at 270. He'd lose by 2 electoral votes. But it's really 1, because he'd be at 269 if he won another, and then she'd drop down. There is an idea that maybe he wins in New Hampshire. Maybe he picks off of Virginia. Virginia's within 2 or 3. Their internal polls are saying that. But it's one of those things to where if you win Pennsylvania, it should all take care of itself. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, Harris is going to have to try and steal a North Carolina or a Georgia. That's what would have to happen, because it's not going to happen in Arizona. Even if you get in Nevada, if you lose Pennsylvania, the 19 electoral votes, that would be such a catastrophic blow. And that's why Harris is in Pennsylvania for 3 stops, all 3 rallies in Pennsylvania to end off the campaign. They know they're hoping that they did enough in Wisconsin and Michigan, because they think those are more liberal than Pennsylvania, and then Pennsylvania is the most conservative one that they have to flip. And they've got this very slim strategy of just going for broke in the Rust Belt, and then maybe they'll also be able to barely hang on to Nevada. I think that's what they're thinking. To me, I think they've pretty much given up North Carolina. There were already reports that they were giving it up. Georgia and Arizona look very good for Trump. So that's what it comes down to, is the Rust Belt. And for Harris, it's just a one path. I mean, you could have the idea where Trump might win a Wisconsin and lose the other 2. You could have the idea where Trump wins a Pennsylvania and loses the other 2. You could have an idea where Trump loses all 3 of the Rust Belt states, but wins a New Hampshire or Virginia and still wins the election, because Trump controls the Sun Belt right now outside of Nevada, which even that seems to be slightly leaning to Trump. So that's where we're sitting right now. Things are looking very good for Trump. You want to be Trump. It is not 50-50. I would agree with them if Georgia and North Carolina were very close. I'd be like, all right, it's 50-50. This is but they're not. Trump has control of the Sun Belt right now, so he's got way more paths than Harris, and you'd rather be Trump than Harris at this point, even though they're going to try and dress it up as this 50-50 race. It's really not. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.